when I would go out dancing and I pack a duffel bag and I got sneakers and then dancing shoes. And my mom was like, where are you? I thought you were going out dancing where you wear a suit and tie and you ask a young lady to dance. I'm like, no, that's not it.
So today is Saturday, February 8th, 2024. Who are we speaking with?
Richard Perez.
What does the Loft mean to you?
Well, I'll say this with as much thoughtfulness as I can, but Loft means everything to me. When I say everything is that I walked in there as a young adult, and I'm still part of it. As a matter of fact, there's a reunion party coming up in 2 weeks, and I will definitely be there, and I look forward to them. And so right now, at this point in my life, most of my connections of friends and acquaintances and social activity is all surrounded around the Loft. So it does mean a lot to me. So if I'm out socially, I'm usually spending time with someone and we're talking about music, or we've been to Loft together, or we spent time in Loft together. And if I'm going to go out dancing, it's definitely Loft related. So that means a lot. I'm not just saying that to say that, but it means quite a bit.
Tell us a story about the first time you went to the Loft. Who brought you there? What did you see? What did you feel? What did you experience? How were they dressed? What did it smell like?
Yeah, interesting. Definitely smelled like a lot of incense, which I liked actually. So my first outing to a club was kind of like the fellas hanging out at the paddleball courts in Eden Wall projects, and like, hey, let's go downtown to Studio 54. And we went down there, we got in, it was great, we had a good time, and I wanted to go back. Kept going back until, and those parties were run by, and I thought I was going to Studio 54 with David Bowie and everybody, but it was a different Studio 54 when I walked in. There were people of color. The music was very cool and grooving. And by then already was into like Latin music and disco. I used to hustle when I was in grade school and early high school. I would, get involved with contests and stuff like that. So I pretty much enjoyed the dance scene. But when I walked in there, I was seeing men hustle together. I was seeing a sort of different element of hustle that was like more professionals, like you ever see kids playing baseball, and it's a kiddie league, but then you see men play, you're like, oh, that's a different game. So when I walked in there, I was like, that hustle was a different game. It's like, I want this, right? So Mike Stone Productions was running those parties with Kenny Carpenter spinning with his big old fro, doing his thing. And so we kept going week after week until they closed down and they moved to Bonds International. So Bonds International was a great playground for me. I mean, that club had stayed open just a few more years longer, I probably would have enjoyed it much more in my life, but it definitely created a freedom for me. Like, I had a talk with my parents, they were very strict. It's like, I'm gonna go out and it's gonna be 10 o'clock at night, and I will not be here till 10 in the morning. But I guarantee you, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not, it's about dance, right? So they kind of got it, they kind of understood it, although they gave me a hard time, because I would say I was going out to I went to Mount St. Michael High School in the Bronx, and I said, I'm going to go to my main St. Michael was a block and a half away. I said, I'm going to go to dance at the club at the school, and I'll be back a little late. Maybe we're going to go to a little party. So I throw a bag out the window with my baggies and my headband, and there used to be feathers back then. It was like a little clip of feathers, and it would come, and you clip them to your head, your headband, right? So I had a whole, So so I throw that out, go to the dance, but I was like, God, and then we went to Manhattan, go to Bonds, dress in Bonds, and then I would come home at 10 in the morning. My mother would be like, who in the hell are you? Like, I want my son back. Like, what the hell? Because I left with conservative clothes and I come back with purple baggy pants, right? So it was just a time that, I started to evolve and find me. Well, going back to Love, how did I get there? So after maybe a year or so, maybe hitting Bonds, maybe even less than that, one 10 o'clock in the morning session, we go into, because I would bring my bag. Like, I was very athletic back then. I would play football, so I always had a duffel bag with, extra socks, extra this and that. So I went to the bathroom to change up. and I see these brothers changing, but they're putting on fresh pair of baggies. I'm like, they're not putting on the shorts. They're putting on like, because I don't know if you know the chemical warfare pants, the baggy pants from the 80s, right? That was a thing. We used to go down to, the village, and they would have them in all different colors. So these brothers were putting on a different fresh pair. I'm like, you look like you're going somewhere. Like, what's up? They're like, oh yeah, we're going to a loft. You heard about the loft? I said, loft? And like now, like I told my mother I'll be home at 10, right? So, but you guys are going there now? Right? And they're like, yeah. So I didn't go with them that night, but the next weekend they invited me. You probably find him on Princeton King. His name is Hiram Cruz. He had his crew. I had my crew. We came from the Bronx. He was from Brooklyn. But we clicked on the dance floor because we were all doing some, acrobatic stuff. Like it wasn't even about dancing on our feet anymore. We want to know how long we could stay on our hands, how long we could flip, dip, dump, jump, and dive, right? And so we clicked, and so he took me down there and sponsored me, and I have been forever grateful. He and I are still friends after all these years. I did go to the Navy for a few years after that initial experience. But he would send me tapes. I would be in the military. I would be on. I'm talking about cassette tapes, right? I would be in the Indian Ocean, and I would get a box of Maxell. Was it Maxell tapes, right? Right? Yeah, all recorded. He would write the name, Lamont Doja, going back to my roots. He would give me the name and it was like I would get chills when I would get it. I would play. So that's the guy who invited me to the loft. But with that invitation became that friendship. And with that friendship, like you said, what it means to, like, it became everything for me. When I was going to the gym there, uh, I would play my little box with my loft music that I got from Hiram. Everybody else is in pumping weights, and I'm just doing handstands and backflips and arches and stretches, because it meant that much to me. And people thought it was kind of bizarre at times, but they either played along or they would just move on. But anyway, to long story short, so that's how I got in. I got in with him, and I just felt like this really warm feeling. Like you got to the front there, the people are nice. They were hippies, you know. So I was born in '64, so I think I grew up at the tail end of the hippie era, and so hippie people always, well, look, I live in Woodstock now, so um, and they had the incense going, and I paid my $9.99, and they gave me my penny back. It was just so cool. And they didn't. I was like, okay, so where's the bar? I was like, well, there's no real bar. I was like, what? So, but you went downstairs, and they had refreshments and big bowl of juice, and just I could go on and on, but let me just, they took care of someone that when I walked out that same night, the first night, that it was morning, my friends had left because they couldn't, I had to stay with, I had to stay with it. When I walked out, they gave me an apple on my way out, they said, here, have a banana. I just was beating myself all night on the floor, but that was refreshing for me, right? It was just great. And so, like, how could I not want to go back and then hear the music that Kenny Carpenter would mix, like David was playing from beginning to end. So when you ask me what it felt like, I felt like I learned something. Like I learned something more about some of the songs and some of the music. Like I didn't have to wait for that mix to come in. Like, he would pause it and then, but then, so you would think he's playing a song, everybody's jumping out, it elevates, right? It spikes, comes down a little bit, but you still have that energy. Then he shuts it off and then plays the next song, and it's like you would think that the energy would die, but it would just pick right back up, right? So it was like it was a very, very memorable experience, and of course the environment, right? I'm in Soho. Back then Soho was grungy, was cool, was hip, it was everything that the Bronx didn't have for me. So that was my first time there, and I still have photos that I have a collage in my room, and of not just that night, because I actually, they had this, actually somebody came to me, and I had some friends, and they're like, I'm taking photos, and because I knew I was going to leave for the Navy for a while. So brother walks up to me, he's like, hey man, we have to respect this home. We don't want to take pictures inside, and that's always been a thing for the loft, right? But man, there's so many pictures out there, as you can see. But for the most part, I still have some of those photos that I look at and able to reminisce.
Tell us about the Loft sound system.
Sometimes I would say that the music is what kept me connected, because I felt like, especially I left Bonds and I would go to Loft, I felt like someone turned the music down in my ear, right? Like someone turned down, if you're watching a movie and there was a soundtrack, it's like that soundtrack just got, and it was because I was, not disciplined enough all I wanted to hear was something thumping. But when I got there and people were dancing to words, and I learned more about percussion, I learned more about, when the bass comes in and how to react to it, even in dancing, you know, um, it was a better experience. Like I got to learn how to appreciate music a little better. As a matter of fact, when I was old enough to buy my little stereo system, and like you, I didn't collect records, but I was so blessed with, like, Haim was a DJ, Eddie Stevens is a DJ, my friend Frankie, who passed away, was a DJ. Like all my close friends were DJs. It's like I didn't have to, buy music. So, which I felt was like also, like DJs and people who collect music, I think that there's a like different level of intelligence there. Like I can't even take 2 hours to go at a record store and just start looking through it, and then remembering artists. My friend Frank, you throw him a beat, he will tell you what year it was, who was the artist, who performed on that. So but I got to learn a lot more, and definitely the sound system helped with that. And when the loft went to Third Street, I had the opportunity to go there off hours. What I mean by that, not just during the party, like before, and maybe stay afterwards. And it was then that David would start playing with his music. He played mostly jazz early on before the party. As a matter of fact, Pat Metheny, Stanley Clark, I learned a lot about jazz, believe it or not, just kind of being there, but that's how he would tweak his system, right? And it was incredible, because you La Vie en Rose by Grace Jones, and she peaks and she elevates, right? And he'll tweak it, and he'll, like, you can see him working with it, right? So I feel like when he did things like that, and playing jazz, it was really to get the sound that he was looking for. So it spoke to me, even though it looked homegrown, right? So my first impression when you asked me, what do you think about the sound system? I'm like, it looked homegrown, but it was definitely, and everyone commented, and all my DJ friends reminded me that it was a Richard Long system, that it was prepared, it was created by an engineer, and with David's input, they really created some super high sounding, quality sounding music. The only thing I find with it is that, Dave never really pumped it up, like, but that was fine for us. It was fine for me. And there were certain records that required it, and it did it, and he would do it, right? Unlike when you go to some other parties and they just pump everything up and it sounds distorted. Yeah.
But we won't name names. Moving on.
Sure.
What was your favorite spot on the dance floor, and why?
The corner. The corner was it for us. Like I said to you, I never really liked being in the limelight. Never liked dance circles. Um, and only because, even to a point where I felt like I got a little better in what I was doing, I always felt like a little embarrassed, or maybe that I may not be as good as anyone else. So I gravitated to the corners, and it's funny because wherever David would open or reopen, we'd look for that one corner. On Third Street, it was on the left side to the back, And that was the corner of mostly dancers. Like, when James Brown came on, like everybody just flew up off their seat, off their chair, off the, but the energy really was developed in the corners. And I liked it. I like the mystery of it as well too. And did it in bonds, right? When you say the corner, at least on that side of the bonds, there was this wall and people just put their legs up, and stretch, do some handstands on the wall to kind of, it was almost like it was like a training session, and so the corner means like that to me, means a lot to me. I always find like, it was more of a athletic feel than going out dancing. Like when I would go out dancing and I pack a duffel bag and I got sneakers and then dancing shoes. And my mom was like, "Where are you? I thought you were going out dancing where you wear a suit and tie and you ask a young lady to dance." I'm like, "No, that's not it. That is not it." So yeah, yeah.
Speaking of which, let's dive into that. Um, Most people, when they think of going out dancing, they think of like couples dancing, a guy and a girl dancing. Describe to somebody who's uninitiated about club dancing and how that differs from traditional couples dancing.
Yeah, so I think that couples dancing has a place and has a time and definitely an occasion, right? So, and that's good, and I think it's traditional. But I think as American music or music that we love and listen to evolved, yeah, the music has evolved. So have we, right? So, like I wrote a short poem. Well, a short, it was kind of long, and I said, back in the day when dancing evolved from "Shall we dance" to "I could dance with me and myself without you to my extent," right? Because what it does is that it breaks down the inhibitions that people have of trying to stay in step together. Like, listen, you do you, you do me, and if we make eye contact, but just think about the freedom you have, of not being, of course, hopefully the music will drive you there too, right? So you just can't, there's some music, it's you want to tango, you got to tango with two people, right? But in this style of dance and this style, this is what I was telling Tim Lawrence during that, I think that it's weird, right? So like David is who he is, and everyone gravitated from different types of parties, and there were garage people, and then there were people that went to purely hip hop. Like, some guys who would come to the loft in their Pumas, right? Like they were just ready to like hit the deck and hit the floor. It's because that style of music kind of gave you the sense to be free. And so for a person who's maybe stuck to one way of dancing, like just think of how free you could feel or how great it would feel to be free while you're dancing, right? Because that's, dancing brings a lot of emotions, and if so that's how I would describe it. And I can get real technical with it because at the end of the day, like I still like to dance my salsa every now and then. I still think I'm a pretty decent hustler. There was one friend that have who I've been going and seeing at clubs, and we were very close friends. Her and I, her name is Doris. We've been dancing since we were like 20, right? And I'm 60. So but so I don't mind that, and I like that dance, but then sometimes I would just want to do my own thing, So yeah.
The loft just wasn't about dancing. It was about community. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes when I think back, I think to myself, like, how did I get so close or intertwined with these people? But it takes repetition and it takes time. And so over time and over the repetition of going on a regular basis, you start to build camaraderie with people. Like I could look at someone even today, but like, so I started early 90s, but I mean early 80s, but by mid 90s, the people that I may not have even talked to, we could look at each other and like, no, you know, we just know, right? Or we hear a song, we look at each other, and go, yeah, you know, but then you see stuff, and what happens is that when you start seeing your colleagues outside that environment, it becomes, oh, hey man, what can I do for you? You're right? Is everything good? How's life? You know, blah, blah, blah. It's almost becomes like someone special. Like, yeah, hold on, buddy. Give me a second. I gotta talk to my law friend here, right? It's just, it becomes that way. I've experienced that even recently. Like, I work for a company called Regeneron. You might know. And I was walking down the hall, and this gentleman, like, and I'm walking with my team, and he comes over to me, and he's like, and he's pointing at me, he goes, garage, right? And I go, shit, man, I haven't been in the garage in ages. And he's kind of baldy with gray hair now. And he pulled up his shirt, and, and he had to go. And dude, we hugged each other. We just hugged each other. We laughed because we had seen each other before. We just couldn't quite. And like I said, I just started got on Facebook because I think I saw you in a picture with like Lewis Key and this and that. I know, oh, you know that guy, you know this guy? And we went back and forth with who we know, but we didn't know that we knew each other. And so when you say like, how does that feel like a community? It's like you just feel like a special person to the people who are part of it, right? It just, and so my team is like, who's that? That your cousin or your brother? Like, so, and I'm like, yeah, I just, if I say to him, yeah, just somebody I know from the club, they would be like, how could you have that much love and hug and laughing and if it's just like someone you're meeting at the club, but they just because it wasn't just about the music and the dance, Quick one, my wife and I were up in Maine, maybe, or Rhode Island. I don't know. We were driving the Northeast, and we stopped at this like crab shack and clam bar kind of place. And we went, we ate, it was rainy, we get in the car, and these two young ladies were middle, they were young. They get out the car and they started walking to the restaurant to eat. And the woman has a jacket with the Paradise Garage logo on the back, right? So I tell my wife, I gotta say hello. I'm sorry, I gotta say hello. I gotta say hello. She's like, all right, fine, yeah, yeah, yeah. My wife supports me 100%. She's not from that, but so I go and I say hello, and again, she's the biggest hug. I'm like, yeah, I had this jacket for years, and da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, we're up in Maine. Like, how am I gonna rent to a garage head in Maine? In Maine. So that's what it means to me. Aside from the dance and it's that building a community, the community that it just filters out in other places that you go in the country and you run into people and you just know that's it. And so, even now I get every now and then, some folks are like, hey man, I remember that one night that, like how often can you do that? But it was repetition, right? It was being there time over time over time, and Loft was everything to me, but don't get me wrong, I would hit other parties, I definitely went to the garage, maybe not as often. And then when I left for the Navy, it closed. And then I was so you talk about the midday mixes and the radio mixes. I used to get my tapes and I would tape Timmy Regisford. He used to play for WBLS on Saturday nights, and I had my little box, put it like you said. Then I would stop it, record it, do all my stuff, turn it around. And so then he went to vinyl. He moved on to vinyl. By then I was already a little bit more, I became more of a veteran, if you will. So I was hip to it. Vinyl was a cool spot. It had like huge industrial equipment on the dance floor and around the dance floor. It was just a cool environment. But then when it became the shelter, it was just like, and so and I mean, when it became the shelter, yeah. And there was a time, in the 90s that the Loft closed down for a bit, late 80s, 90s. And so shelter became a surrogate, you know. And it was funny because it was strictly the way I saw it. And I have a friend who passed away, his name was Audie. He was my running buddy. He and I, were definitely very Loft centric dancing people. When we go there, we just knew that it was more of a garage centric crowd, right? Like there was no doubt it was more of a, and there were people like Lewis and this and that, but it was still, a different. So what I used to hear people say is like, instead of they're dancing to the music instead of with the music, right? In the Loft, have people dancing with the music, and you're just, and you're feeling it. It's like we turn into Fred Astaire and this and that, right? Whereas, and I loved Larry Levan, no doubt, and especially when he would go crazy and do his things and play like animal noises for like an hour. But you would dance into it. Just want to feel it. We just wanted to jack it up, right? It was just heart pumping, stuff like that. Now, later in the morning, it did get very loft-like, right? Because then he would play something that was a bit more melodic, and so on and so forth. But so to me, there was that difference in that in how the two kind of felt,
Tell us about the balloons at the loft.
the balloons, right? um, so the balloons today, right? So if I go to a law party, which I'm going to go in a couple of weeks, it's the last time I was there, I was like, man, I'm getting old or something, but there was these European Asian kids are like, and I'm like, so what they're saying is that they can tell by the music that, and it's almost time for the balloons to drop, right? So, right, so, and I have some photos, and I wish but there's a room full of balloons. I think that was like the perfect thing that Dave Mancuso could do. I don't know who gave him the idea, if he did himself, but it just felt very, very warm. And when he would play this one song called Scrib Cakes, he would release a net, not all of them, but some that were in a net, and they would just be all around the dance floor. And so my gripe is, and I'll tell you right now to anyone who's listening, I like the balloons back then more than I like the balloons now. But that's a different story. So these kids are like watching when the balloons drop and this and that. So I'm like, yeah, and this balloon thing has become a thing, like something that was so sacred and so like almost you couldn't predict it. It's starting to become a thing, and so now I don't really like it that much anymore. And then people just love to stomp on it and make noise. But the balloons that would come down when on Third Street, they were a lot bigger. They were a lot thicker. They became like my dance tools, right? So the bigger the balloon, the better. I would like just, how you just roll, right? So I would put it under my belly and just roll with the balloons. Like I couldn't wait for that, right? Like to me, like the balloons was like if so everyone has a different, you know, so some men are straight and some men are gay. So like if you go to a party and you see that you're looking for a woman, and like it wouldn't be a party without the woman. It would not be a law party without the balloons. Like if I went to a law party there was no balloons, I'd be like really unhappy, right? Because aside from that, if no one else is on the dance floor, and I happen to be one of those people that don't like to sit around for a long time, and I usually found myself having more energy when people are sitting down, relaxed, and now I got this balloon that I don't even have to touch it, but the wind or the air that as I circle around the balloon starts to move, and then you start this balloon spin around the balloon, so it feels like you're dancing with the balloon. And I think I'm getting too much into the whole balloon thing, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like the balloon like meant anything to me, and of course, it's always special to have them drop, at the height of Script Cakes or any other song. I think these actually changed and now it's not even Script Kicks anymore. They does it too, but it's become a thing now, But back then it was very, very, yeah, yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Let's talk about alcohol. The loft was famous for not having alcohol. Um, Compare and contrast the vibe with venues that did have alcohol. How did that change the vibe of the dance floor, if at all?
Yeah. So is this supposed to be a therapy session as well as an interview, right? Um, Thankfully, so the politically correct thing to say is that, and not just that, but also the how we felt because, I told you I used to go to Bonds, and Bonds was on 40 something street, right? It was very commercial. They did have a bar that closed at 4, and of course there would be drinks all over the floor. You wouldn't find that at the law, right? As a matter of fact, the drinks were downstairs and they were in cups that you could throw away or you could put them to the side, right? And then, so when you compare that to a place that serves alcohol, like the occasional Lulu Vega parties I used to go to on, on 10th Avenue on the west side, and some of the other more commercial parties would have alcohol. And I really appreciated a dance floor that um, wasn't spilled with alcohol, and it doesn't wasn't spilled with people. I told this to somebody one time, because what happens is when you're dancing in the corner and you dance with people who I usually associated with, you're definitely trying to get some kind of workout. And that workout could mean a stretch or a handstand or back bend or this and that. But when somebody's drunk, they want to do the same thing. So I have told people, rolling around on the floor in a drunken stupor doesn't mean that you're dancing, right? Right. So that's what took away, that's what commercial places took away from the floor. It was having that. But I'll be a little bit of a hypocrite if I didn't say that not serving alcohol, I did not miss alcohol at the Loft whatsoever. So thanks to the graciousness and the openness of the Loft. So when I first started to connect with a lot of people, I was noticing that everybody was bringing their cooler, and in the cooler was not just a few beers, but a nice cold bottle of Jack Daniels and a nice cold bottle of Coca-Cola, and then I started to do that myself, right? And I'll guarantee, there's times where I spent more time at the Loft than I had alcohol for. So we would be like on Third Street, it's like, damn, it's 6 in the morning. Don't worry, the bodega's gonna be open in about an hour. All right, great. The bodega, I mean the stores on the street. So we would leave, like, all right, I would head out, one of my buddies would head out, and we would go and now it's Sunday, right? So the guys knew us. They were like, here, they would give us a brown bag, go to the back, put your beers in there. So we put a couple 40s in there, right? And then we would go back to the party, and it would be like bright as hell outside. We'll walk around with 40s, in our baggy pants with dirty, dusty sneakers. Like the ladies going to church and saying, what the hell's going on here, right? But that was the freedom that we had, man. And I can't even like explain that to anyone and expect them to understand it. So we get inside, and then, after a long, because again, we were working out, it was nice to have that cold beer. But nobody got drunk, nobody acted stupid, and nobody we all respected each other, right? I mean, so I gotta say again, thanks to the kindness of the law folks and the family and David. And it was, there was a couple people that were working for the law firm. They were getting a little like, little security happy, like, man, you can't go on. Like, well, hey, David's like, let them go, and because he knew that we'll come back and we're gonna dance, and he's gonna keep playing for us, right? So, so anyhow, so not loving loving the fact that it wasn't a drinking environment, but loving the fact that I was able to drink. And I don't know if that sounds hypocritical, but it made it through many nights with those 40s from the bodega down the street. Yeah.
Controversial question. You could elect not to answer because it may be sensitive. Before you were married, did you have any relationships with any of the people, women at the loft?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I could probably, so I've had one, two, three, like maybe 3 or 4 relationships of people that I even, okay, so one was, or 2 of them, like they had never been there. So we meet and we fall in love, we have a relationship. Then one was from there, been there, and then one that I have for a really long time, it was almost like, being in high school and chasing after someone through freshman year all the way to senior year, and you finally got with them in senior year, right? And that was pretty of a longer lasting relationship, and that was good, yeah. So yes, and that's why you said when I wasn't saying it lightly when the law meant everything to me, because most of my relationships, the one I have now, wasn't from the loft, but if I had not made a loft decision, I would have not met her. So, so you see, it's still connected one way or the other, right?
Explain that. Explain that. If you hadn't made a loft decision, explain that. How'd you guys meet and talk about the loft connection? Or
Yeah, well, just I was gonna go to so I was gonna go to a loft party, and it was a reunion party, and I have broken up with my ex, and I have a friend that I was someone that I'm a friend with since I was in fourth grade, and she and I been friends for so many years, never been in relationship, never been loving that way, but we've been like brothers and sisters. So I told her I don't want to go to loft alone tomorrow. Come with me, and I'll pay your way. Da da da. And this and that. She's like, well, the only time I'll go with you is if you go with me tonight, to this afternoon, and it was like on a Saturday morning to a wedding. I have to go to a wedding, and the person my cousin I was going with, he can't go. So it says, so for you to go with me to Love Parade, I have to go with you to a wedding. I'm like, you serious, right? And I'm like, fine. So anyway, I go there, and that's where I meet my wife, and we're together 24 years now. Yeah, yeah. It all comes full circle, man. I gotta tell you, I wish I could say it any other way, but
everything ties back to the loft. I
yeah,
love,
one
I
way or
love-
the other, one way or the other, one way or the other.
How did dancing at the loft change your relationship with your body and with movement?
That's a good question. I like that question. I like that question a lot. Um, I'll just say dancing at the loft is what's kept me athletic beyond my years of being somewhat athletic. So in other words, high school, football, always working out, always is not go to the military. I'm in the Navy there. My first couple of years, 3 or 4 years, boot camp, this, that, still, physical shape, because I went to school. And even after college, I mean, even after high school football, I continued to work out. Um, the dance is what continued to keep me wanting to do things and want to be more physical. So yeah, we went out dancing on Saturdays, but it didn't happen only on Saturday. It happened because Sunday we rested, and I say we, my friends that were close to me. Monday we would get together and stretch. Tuesday we would do conditioning type of stuff like handstands, back bends, cartwheels. We were trying to get it precise as much as we can. Wednesdays, same thing. Thursdays, we would stretch. Friday, we would smoke a little weed, have some pizza, and get ready for Saturday, right? So uh, it kind of kept me athletic in a way. And then as I got older and I started dating, and it became more of I started to do more social things, and I wasn't as disciplined that way. But I think that's evolved, right? Because you're in your young 20s, you still want to look good for the woman, and you don't want your dance moves not to be precise, right? So we had that discipline, and then started dating and so on and so forth, and I would go out, but still always prepare for the Saturday by stretching at some point, practicing that back bend. I happened to I had developed a niche at that time, where I was, and you may find a picture too on where I would able to go into a back bend and just keep walking over, right? Um, and it took a lot of practice to do that. So I maintained that some sort of, athleticism, if you will, to maintaining dancing. As a matter of fact, when more of my, I swear, if I'm lying, I'm dying, but there were times in my life where if I was sick and I didn't go out for a while, um, I would gain weight and I would feel it. I would feel it because again, I was prepping during the week, and then I was hitting the deck on so a Saturday night from 12 to 10 was on the floor, one hand, this, that, back, boom, boom, boom. I would feel it. I would feel it in my and um, you know, I no longer went to the gym. I just kind of did all stuff at home, floor moves and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how dance has kept me to maintain some sort of health and decent health. So which is one thing that I miss now is I don't really go out as much. Can't because life and this and that and whatever. And plus, I want to stay in one piece. I did have one experience one time, which, so I was doing a back bend, and just as I was about to come over, a really close, dearing, loving friend of mine uh, didn't know I was there and did a car wheel. And so I dropped like this. I dropped with my knee bent. So my my quad popped from my patella. So I had to have surgery to put it together. But it didn't stop me. As soon as I was able to like stretch and get out there, I was like, it wasn't like I said, oh, this was tragic and it will never make me dead. It was like, I see that scar. What does the loft mean to you? One of my loving loft friends left me a scar on my leg that I could see the rest of my life. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Which leads me to my next question. Many people speak of the loft as a spiritual experience. Talk about the moment when you felt this spiritual dimension.
when the loft moved to Third Street, I enjoyed Prince and Mercer. And like I said, during the tail end, I was in and out of New York with the military. When I left for the Navy, I wanted nothing more than to come back home and hit the parties. I just, my parents, my family was like, why'd you go away if you want? It's like, because I need to have a career and I need to have something. But so I was haze gray and underway. What they mean by that is I was on a ship, gray old ship out in the Indian Ocean. And I went through all the manuals and I even looked and applied for different programs that would bring me back to the United States. Not only was I successful, I was able to get me stationed in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is only about, you know, 50 minutes from the city, right? And then I got stationed there. And so now I hear I'm in the military and I'm close to my party in my club, right? So that experience has that got me into like having a broader connection with the loft. And so when they moved to Third Street, I was able to go a lot more often. And then when I got out the military, I was even able to go a lot more often. And that spiritual awakening actually kind of, I hate to say it, and my wife sees it, she'll no, I'll explain it. But when I met my when I met one of my exes there, like so I told you, we would have our occasional 40s and this and that. And we would do, aside from the movements, a lot of it was b-boyish. So there was just testosterone in the room, right? And so, but then when I met her and we would dance and I would go together, I wouldn't spend as much time with my friends. I probably wouldn't smoke as much weed with my friends. Um, so I got to experience the experience without the influence of much stuff, right? And this is when I felt like, wow, it still feels good. Like it still felt real. Because there was a time like if I hadn't smoked that joint and I hadn't had that drink, it probably wouldn't have felt like a party. You know what I mean? So during that time, I was able to experience more time without it. And then of course, I would have over at home, I would have like a stack of um, all of the old invitations that Dave used to send. And one night she was at my place and I saw the stack and I was moving it and she started to go through it. And she saw a lot of the, how would you say, bohemian sort of spiritual references within David's invitations, which it went over my head. I didn't know what an Om symbol was, and I didn't know what an Om symbol meant. But I know I saw it in every invitation I got from 1982, right? So then I start to make that connection again. I go, David is a serious guy. Like, he just doesn't want to throw music at us. He's also making a spiritual connection with us. And, understanding the divinity of other religions and Buddhism and in his writings he would Love Saves the Day didn't come out of anywhere. I'm sure that it was somewhere deep. And So I was like, wow, that's what that means. And, she knew more about some of that, I would say hippie stuff more than I did back then. But she was from California, hence the reason why I got there. But she brought with her a lot of like spirituality and a little spiritual feeling besides the religion and God, right? So then when I made the connection with her and that the loft was that way, I started to develop some of that, right? Like I was buying incense, I stopped using cologne, I started using oils, I started to read more about a little bit about Buddhism and this and that. And that day when she saw the Om symbol, um, she's like, well, you've seen this before. I go, yeah, on the Om. She goes, no, you have seen it before. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And so we're all adults here, right? So one time we were having our thing, and we were doing our thing, and I noticed on the whole lower back, she had an Om symbol, right? And I'm like, when did you get this? She's like, you've seen it before. Then she finally reminded me and go, she goes, I've had mine since I was 12. And we're the same age now. So she had already started to, learn about how to feel protected by that Om symbol and maybe the chants and maybe the meditation and all that stuff, right? So so that's when it brought, because I met a third, and then I started to get a little bit more aware of just spirituality, people, you know, and connection with people. And then finding that there were more people out there at the law like that were like that felt like me in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? So yeah, that was sorry I had to bring someone into that picture, but I had to be real, right? So I can't, I just can't say that, oh yeah, one night I had an epiphany, you know?
No, I love the fact that you brought something in. And that actually ties into my next question, which is, what did you learn about yourself through your experiences at the Loft?
You know, that I can love people who are not my family, like not my sister, not my cousin, that I could share those experiences with them, and then I could, you know, one person I met at the loft early 90s, 80s rather. We didn't talk for a while. We didn't, and then we connected again in the late 80s, and we were inseparable until he passed away about 10 years ago or less, maybe 7, 8 years ago. His name was Audrey Fogel. And I would do anything for this man, when he was dying from pancreatic cancer, and I was going to his apartment and keeping him busy and joking with him and trying to watch a basketball game, and then getting him what he needs, and then his dealing with his death, and then his family extending themselves to me and me extending myself to them, right? Is it reminding me that, the law of connections to me are some ways stronger than my own family connections. I lost my mother and father early on. In 93, I lost my mom, and then 97, I lost my dad. But I didn't lose my will for people and for love. And my sister and I were not always very close, but we were close enough. But I didn't, so I didn't shy away from people or shy away from relationships that were fruitful. And so the relationships that I developed in the loft, that I still am very near and dear with today, uh, taught me that I can love people beyond my family. Like there is, and this sense of community that we have is just, it's unbelievable because it comes back to me. It comes back to me every time. And, I stayed away from Facebook for a long time, because of personal reasons and job. I'm like, I got to be managing this and this and that. Um, but when Audie died, and then another friend died who was not from the loft, but he would come with me once in a while. I felt kind of lonely. I felt like, so I said, all right, maybe, and every now and then I run to somebody like, yeah, you didn't get so and so on Facebook. I'm like, okay, I'm missing something out. Let me get on Facebook. And then, but the love I've been getting from people from Facebook is like, a clear indication that, that is reciprocal, right? So the one thing I learned about myself is that I could love beyond my immediate family, and that I'm capable of having meaningful relationships, So yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a story about David Mancuso.
I was always afraid of that guy. I was afraid of him because I always felt like this man is so intelligent. Like I wouldn't know what to say to him if I just, So I always try to keep it brief as a brief hello. Um, but then when he was doing the right thing on the dance floor, I would give him a nice big whistle that he would go like this, and he would know it was me, right? So we had this little thing with each other where I just never really got that close. And I'm not that kind of person. Like if I start going to a venue and you're there, and I know we had this experience, like I'm not going to try to suck up, right? Or try to, not to say that other people do that, but and plus I always felt like, he was like a different higher being. Like I just felt like he was now it's funny because his partner Doug Sherman, I can easily kind of relate to, and and we connected very quickly. With Dave, it was almost like a father God figure, right? So I never really, but the moments that we did have, uh, and that I was able to connect with him, were times when, on Third Street during that time, I was fortunate enough to be working with a friend of mine at a in the Lower East Side, and at a loft on First Avenue and Second Street. And I would take breaks and I would go down to the loft and just knock on the door and say, "Hey, Dave, what's up? Hey, come on in." And he'd be there blowing balloons with someone, and we'll chat. And he gave me conversation. I always try to sell him weed, but he didn't want to buy it. He just wanted it for free, which is fine. I gave it to him, right? So, and then, because I wasn't a DJ into music, like I didn't get heavy into a lot of the technicalities of stuff, right? But it was still like he was a respectful person. So that over the years, when I would see him, he would give me that look like, yeah, I know you. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Because he knows so many people, right? And someone who's like, to me, a called celebrity type, they could just glance over you. But he wouldn't glance, he would look at me and if we were close enough, he'd extend the hug. And if I was close, I would extend the hug. And so he would too. So I really appreciated that of him. And so we didn't have a close relationship. I'll never claim that. There are a lot more people who are much, much closer to David, but I'm glad that I had the opportunity to be in his presence, whether it's on a dance floor or even on a one-on-one, which I had that opportunity one time. As a matter of fact, when my close friend Audie passed away, David Mancuso left me a voicemail when he heard about it, to say that he heard that he passed away, and or that no, just before he passed away, he was sick. And I don't even know how he got my number, but I'm glad he got it. So he called and then left that. I kept that voicemail for years. As a matter of fact, about 2 years ago, my phone crapped out. So voicemail crashed. So I had to restart everything. And I lost that voicemail. I was so upset that I lost it. But to his voice and say, "Hey, how's Audie? How are you doing?" This and that, was like very special to me. And Audie was very special. He knew Audie was very special to me too. So having that voicemail on my phone from David calling about Audie was a very profound thing for me. I feel like, you go through life hoping that you make it somewhere, and I feel like, in the status of things, David called me, right? So like, wow, man, I made it somewhere, and I was thinking about him the other day when you say that about the relationship with him, because I was thinking to myself, how or what would David's music sound like if David was a musician? Like, if you just go through the spectrum of what he would play on any given night, where he start off with some melodic tunes. Would he play a violin? Would he play a piano? Like I wouldn't even know what instrument he would play, but he would definitely be able to play the timbales, once, because he would play, set fire to it, or when he would, get the dance floor moving with some more upbeat tunes. Like, this guy would have made some tremendous music if he was a musician. I can't even imagine what it would be like. In a way, I'm kind of glad that he didn't, because he brought us all this great music that we have and we know today. But man, if he made his own music, what would that sound like? I don't know. Someday I'm gonna think about it and may write about it, but connected to songs that he plays, right? Because he knew what to play at what time and what moment, right? And what kind of feedback he was going to get from the dance floor. There were times when he left Third Street and went to Avenue A and then Avenue B. Those are, I felt a little sadder times because he wasn't getting the people weren't coming as much as they should. So it was like myself and Gabe and Nawab, like at the end, be just the three of us. And they would play on and on. The best thing in life is free. Tell me what you mean to me, Janet Jackson and Luther Vandross. And he would just and we would just be spinning and spinning and cartwheeling. And then he would play it again. I almost felt like he was just watching us and enjoying himself. Like, you know what I mean? I want to keep this feeling going. Um, so aside from having had that personal connection, it was nice to have it on a dance floor. And whether, most people knew it or not, I thought it was special because I think he would look onto the dance floor and feel what was happening in the corner, right? And feel like, okay, it's time to play Eddie Grant now, right? Because these guys want to do some hard work, right? So that kind of that's it. I feel the relationship that we've gotten and that we had. Yeah.
What do you think David understood about community and music that other people didn't understand?
So the simple response would be like, David was a hippie. David, was a hippie. I heard he lived up here, and not I heard, but people told me they've been to his house. He lived up here in Woodstock area. Um, I know a woman who has a shop here. She goes to parties, and she knew David when he was up here. And I think he was all about peace, love, and community. And I don't know what happened to him in his life, but he probably was like one note away from being like a rocker to who he became. And I'm so glad he did not become a rocker. Like I would, so the rock world has like, Rolling Stones and all that stuff. And I'd say he didn't like that music, but he developed into a genre of music with this hippie background that I think we all fed off of. We would love to go in there and see his Buddha all lit up with incense and and know that environment would draw in and the balloons would draw in energy. So he definitely had a good sense of community. And so by him connecting it with the music and then giving us that as a gift, like to me, as if he was a Buddha, his gift to us would be the music. And I'm saying that facetiously because he did. Like we would, there were times where and when times were really good, he would have a Christmas tree up in the middle of the dance floor and have records all over them, all around it during Christmas time. So I have a few of them myself right here. I'm not a record collector, but I have a few. And some of them have been from like getting to a Loft early enough before the vultures came, right? But it's funny, people were not like that. They weren't vultures. They were like, oh yeah, I got that. Okay, yeah, I don't need that. I'm like, oh yeah, I want that. And so he would gave us the gift of music, figuratively and literally, especially with that Christmas tree. That was great.
When did you stop going to the Loft and why?
I haven't, I haven't stopped. I'm gonna go to an anniversary party and on the 17th or the 18th, yeah, 17th. So I have slowed down, and times change, right? So, it only was recent, Murma, that I realized that Willie Mays cannot continue to play baseball, right? So Richard Perez cannot continue to keep dancing on the floor the way he has. So, with that, comes life responsibilities and this and that. So where I may have, slowed things down a little bit, the Loft is still near and dear to my heart. When I moved, I made sure that they changed my address and I didn't want to miss an invitation. But the Loft is different for me now. Now the Loft for me, it's about nostalgia. It's about seeing the people, you know. If I get a good dance, a good 20-minute dance, I'd be lucky because it gets so darn crowded. And I've, a year ago I was there again, I don't go every one, but I make it a point to go. And it was packed, but I could not find like more than 3 or 4 of my friends. right? And this is what I was trying to explain to Tim Lawrence, is that it's good that they're still having parties and they're doing things, and it has to evolve to the next generation, right? But if we forget those that were there, for us it'll just never be the same, And so it's good to kind of continue and think about the times you had and those who were there before, right? So I don't know if I ever did you I might post. I have a short, well, it's not short, but it's a poem, right? And it's called Back in the Day. Um and so when I say in that poem that the faces have changed, but the silhouettes are the same, like I see people in other people, or I see moments in time that I thought I saw before, but it's just a memory, right? And I enjoy that because I can't cry about not having that anymore, but I do enjoy it, right? Um, but it keeps the fire lit for me for sure. Yeah.
I feel like we can do a part 2 at some point.
Well, I'll be happy to, because you know what, at first, so I'm glad we had to talk. California, we're from the Bronx, this and that, because it just now made it easier for me, right? Like if I was just talking to a CBS guy who didn't want to care and who had no connect, you know what I mean? But the talk made it. So yeah, I mean, just when I didn't think I had enough to talk about, there's always more.
Yeah,
Um,
this is so good. I want the Loft episode to breathe on its own. And
right.
then I want us to do a separate episode about other clubs of that era. Because I know you went to other places besides the Loft, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I want to go in depth on the Garage,
Yeah.
54,
Yeah.
Bond,
Yeah.
and then also have a broader conversation about what was happening in New York at the time that made the clubs a safe space for us. So,
Yes,
um,
absolutely. Absolutely. Great.
well, thank you
Cool.
so much.
Cool, man. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
All right. Take care. Have a good day.
Talk to you soon.
All
All
right.
right.
Peace.
Bye.